"Can I clean your barn for a meal?" When the struggling rancher saw her, my heart froze. I will never forget the day everything fell apart. The sun hung low and heavy in the sky, casting stretched shadows over the dusty ground. I could almost hear the whisper of fate, teasing me. It was a strange day, thick with an unsettling vibe that sent chills skittering down my spine. When I spotted her, my breath caught. She stood there, just outside the rusted gates of the old Anderson ranch, a small figure against an expanse of barren land. Her clothes were tattered, hanging off her thin frame like a second skin, blending seamlessly into the backdrop of decay. Her hair, a wild mix of sun-kissed gold and dirt, framed her face, hiding eyes that seemed to hold untold stories, tears, and dreams. I had seen despair before, but this felt like a silent scream hanging in the still air. "Can I clean your barn for a meal?" she asked, her voice fragile yet resolute, cutting through the silence as sharp as broken glass. The words echoed in my mind long after she spoke them, vibrating against the walls of my heart. What desperation pushed her to this? The thought alone twisted something within me. I was barely scraping by, my ranch barely standing, everything marked by hardships. A deep, rumbling ache made its home in my stomach, and for a moment, I forgot my own hunger in the face of her vulnerability. The barn. It was a forgotten relic filled with dust and shadows. But the thought of her fragile hands working through the decay. It felt like inviting misery across the threshold of my pain. I hesitated, then she glanced up, locking her gaze with mine. That connection, raw and electric, set my pulse racing. I glimpsed something in her eyes, a flicker of warmth, the light of impossible hope. My heart pounded with a new rhythm, a mixture of fear and compassion. I couldn't deny the spark, the magnetic pull drawing me closer. Just behind her, storm clouds swirled ominously, the air vibrating with anticipation. The world felt heavier, and I sensed a storm brewing not just in the sky, but in my very soul. A quick movement caught my eye, a flash of something bright and vibrant, like an ember caught amidst charred remains. But seconds later, it vanished into the gloom. "What's your name?" I managed to ask, my voice barely breaking through the tension. "Bree," she breathed, her eyes widening as if weighing the significance of that single word. I waited, but no more came. And just like that, everything shifted. The future stretched before me, shifting and uncertain. I felt the weight of the universe resting on my shoulders, and suddenly, I was terrified. Had I just opened a door? A flicker of doubt hovered in the air. An unanswered question loomed large. What had I unleashed by inviting this mysterious girl into my life? Hey, before we continue with this amazing story, I need to give you an important heads up. Many subscribers have reported that YouTube unsubscribed them without warning. Take a quick second to check the red button below to make sure you're still subscribed to the channel. I'd hate for you to miss any of the exclusive content coming soon. And while you're there, smash that like button, it really helps me out with the algorithm. Oh, and tell me in the comments, which city are you watching from? I love getting to know every amazing person who's part of this community. Your participation makes all the difference. Let's connect. The storm rolled in faster than I anticipated, the sky darkening as Bree took a tentative step closer. The first drop of rain fell, sizzling against the parched earth, and in that heartbeat, I felt the weight of choice pressing on me. She stood there, caught between desperation and quiet hope, while my heart wrestled with uncertainty. "Come inside," I said finally, the words spilling out before I had time to rethink. I turned, ushering her towards the barn that had withstood so many storms, yet I felt this new wave of turmoil could crumble its very walls. Inside, the air was thick with the scent of aged hay and the lingering remnants of memories, remnants I was too afraid to relive. I glanced around at the shadows that danced across the barn walls as Bree stepped inside, her gaze sweeping over the splintering wood and rusted tools. "It's not much, but it's home," I murmured, trying to mask the quaver in my voice. I didn't need her pity. As the first raindrops began to patter against the roof, I busied myself in a corner, grabbing an old shovel, its handle slick with dust. "Let's get started." That we worked in silence, our movements synchronized as the storm raged outside. For every whisper of the wind, there was a soft clinking of metal against the ground, the initial awkwardness melting away into a shared rhythm. In that barn, amidst cobwebs and old memories, I found myself stealing glances at her. Bree's determination was palpable. She moved with a grace that belied her struggle, her thin arms working tirelessly as though she was reclaiming a piece of herself with every stroke of the brush. "Why are you out here?" I found myself asking, curiosity breaking through the cocoon of tension. Unlike the storm brewing outside, her story was a flicker of fragile light that I felt compelled to uncover. Bree paused, her breath hitching as she hesitated before answering. I had nowhere else to go," she said softly, her voice cracking. "Things got too hard, and I thought maybe if I could find a way to contribute, I could earn my keep." "How old are you, Bree?" I asked, a question that hung uncomfortably in the silence of the barn. 17, she replied, vulnerability rippling in her voice. "But I've seen things that make you grow up faster." A shiver ran through me at her words. I sensed stories of pain hidden just beneath the surface, a tapestry stitched with threads of despair that I longed to unravel. As the storm raged on, punctuating the air with sharp booms of thunder, we carried on, speaking in half-whispers, revealing tiny fragments of ourselves. She told me about her family, tales laced with memories of laughter that turned to anguish, of dreams she once held that had slipped through her fingers like sand. I shared the ghosts of my own past, farms failing, dreams crumbling, the nagging fear of being consumed by the weight of broken promises. And then, in an unexpected moment, she started humming softly an old tune that echoed in my mind, tethering me to moments of long-lost hope. I blinked back tears that threatened to spill over. Her voice rose and swelled like the storm outside, filling the barn with warmth. For just a heartbeat, the burdens melted away. But then, the atmosphere shifted again. The peace was shattered when I heard the crunch of gravel outside, tires rolling over stones. A truck, one that sent a pulse of dread racing through me. I hesitated, and Bree's song cut off, a tense silence hanging heavy between us. "Who is it?" she breathed, eyes wide, scanning the warped shadows of the barn as anxiety rippled through her small form. "I don't know," I replied, my heart racing with sudden realization. The world outside this refuge had not forgotten us, and the ghosts of my past were about to come knocking. Bree ducked low, her vulnerability sharpened on her features, and I felt an odd protective instinct rise within me. "You should hide," I urged, glancing towards the far corner where hay bales towered like sentinels. "Please, just tell me who it is." Her voice was a mixture of trepidation and defiance, a challenge wrapped in fear, but as I stepped toward the door, a jolt of panic seized me. The sound of approaching footsteps was no longer a distant echo, it was here, present, a heavy tolling of fate waiting to unveil its secrets. I hesitated at the threshold, torn between confronting the unknown and protecting the fragile connection we had forged in the heart of the storm. I turned back, ready to tell her it was okay, to stay hidden until we knew more. But the look in her eyes, the desperate need for assurance, for safety, for hope plunged me back into the chaos I couldn't escape. Just before I could utter a single word, the door creaked open, and through the darkness stepped a familiar silhouette that sent icy tendrils of dread curling around my heart. "Thought I'd find you here," the voice dripped with a mix of menace and familiarity. In that instant, I knew we were standing on the precipice of something irrevocable, caught between the storm inside and the one brewing outside, and the choice I was about to make would change everything. The storm had turned the outside world into a haunting blur of darkness, but the air inside the barn was electric with uncertainty. The silhouette at the door shifted forward, revealing the shadow of my older brother, Marcus. His dark eyes glinted with a knowledge of the mistakes I made, a knowing that cut deeper than the storm raging outside. "What are you doing here?" I managed to choke out, instinctively stepping closer to Bree, who was still hidden among the shadows. I could feel her eyes widen, fear threading through her determination. "Funny seeing you play the hero," Marcus said, his tone mocking yet tainted with an undertone of concern. "You think you can just abandon everything? That it'll all just go away?" the memories flooded back like the torrential rain pounding against the roof, moments of late-night fights and reckless decisions. This isn't what you think, Marcus. In trying Toto do what? Save the girl. He interrupted, his laughter echoing in the confined space, bitter and sharp against the backdrop of our fractured childhood. You think you can fix everything with a shovel and a few heartstrings? Look around. This place is falling apart. Stop it, I snapped back, fury igniting inside me, protective instincts surging for Bree. But as the words left my lips, I felt the heavy weight of guilt drape around my shoulders. I knew Marcus was right. The farm, my hopes, everything was slipping through my fingers. Do you think she even wants to be here? Look at her, he said, harshness creeping into his voice as he gestured toward Bree. She's just another broken thing for you to fix. But guess what? You can't fix every broken thing, Jake. Bree shifted, her presence lurking like a whisper, seeing everything unfold. I wanted to reassure her, to pull her from the storm of words we were unleashing, but Marcus' words clawed at my resolve, their sting deepening my self-doubt. Maybe she's here for a reason, I countered weakly, though uncertainty wove itself into my fabric, leaving me vulnerable. Maybe we both are. Marcus laughed again, a hollow sound that seemed to amplify the despair suffocating me. That's romantic. But this is real life. What do you know about real life? Just look behind you. Bree's gaze darted back and forth between us, uncertainty tightening her features. I just need to find a place. Tono. Marcus seized the moment, his tone sharp as glass. You need to leave. Your kind doesn't belong here. With his words, a rush of anger surged within me. You don't get to decide where she belongs, I shouted, stepping in front of Bree protectively. Our connection was fragile, a flickering flame against the storm, but I would shield it with all I had. Enough, Marcus warned, voice laden with threat. We're out here trying to survive. We can't. And then didn't have to finish. The distant sound of an engine echoed through the wind, and my stomach sank. I recognized that rumble, the sound of a familiar truck, the kind that heralded not just unwelcome visitors, but inevitable turmoil. It's my dad, I whispered, the mere thought freezing the air between us. His hand had been heavy when he left, unleashed like coarse cement on our lives, and I had spent years trying to push back against his shadow. Now, it threatened to choke me again. Jake, Bree murmured, her voice back to that timid whisper, trembling under the looming threat. What do we do? I stole a glance at her, and something flickered in her eyes, a spark of hope that ignited beneath the fear. These were moments born from uncertainty yet entwined with an unyielding need to survive. She was a reflection of all that I had fought for, and in her, I glimpsed a shared resilience against our broken pasts. As I took a step back toward her, my brother's laughter faded, leaving only the distant growl of the engine. They won't let you keep her. You know that, he said, almost pleadingly. You really think you can protect her from that? A moment stretched taut between us, heavy with the weight of those words. I chose my next steps carefully. If it means standing against everything I was taught, then yes, I will. The barn felt smaller now, the walls closing in, and the thunder outside rumbled in solidarity. Just as I resolved that I would not let anyone else dictate the lives we chose to live, a flash of lightning illuminated my brother's face, momentarily highlighting desperation mixed with worry. He stepped back momentarily, away from my protective stance, and his voice softened. You're going to get hurt, Jake. Suddenly, there was a loud crash, a beam of wood splintering as an unseen force pushed against the barn. My heart raced as the shadows danced wildly, caught between the storm of possibilities, and fear rippled through Bree's timid frame, and then, I heard the unmistakable sound of footsteps breaking through the fragile tranquility, heavy boots crunching against gravel, heading toward us, the reckoning of our past. Jake, Bree whispered, her voice quavering, what if they find out who I really am? In that fraught moment, standing on the brink, I realized that hope and despair were now inseparable companions on this journey, their paths intertwining as the shadows of our lives loomed large, and with every choice, we drew closer to the fire. The footsteps approached like a thunderous drum, relentless and foreboding. Each crunch of gravel sent chills skimming down my spine, a reminder that no matter how desperately I wanted to forge my own path, the past loitered like a ghost, ready to reclaim me. "We don't have time for this," I muttered, my eyes darting to Marcus, who hovered just at the edge of uncertainty, torn between loyalty and a sense of protection he hadn't quite grasped. Bree's breath hitched beside me, her vulnerability pressing against me as tightly as my own fear. "Jake, please," she started, but the words fell short, caught in the fissures of hesitation. I could see the struggle within her, a young woman molded by her experiences yet afraid to reveal her true self. "Just trust me," I whispered, trying to embody the courage I felt slipping through my fingers. "Whatever happens, we'll find a way." Marcus looked at me with a newfound intensity, something akin to regret flickering in his dark eyes. "You think that by hiding her, you're helping? You're just keeping her in danger, both of you. That I need to keep her safe," I shot back. My voice was more resolute than I felt, but I couldn't let doubt creep in now. The truck's engine rumbled loudly enough to drown out the murmurs spiraling inside my head, and a deep breath filled my lungs, sustaining me for what was to come. "Then help me," Marcus replied, and for a fleeting moment, sincerity tangled between us, hanging thick in the charged atmosphere. "If they find out who she is, they'll figure it out, okay?" The urgency in my tone pierced through the murky air. But deep down, I felt an unsettling twist of uncertainty. What did I know about her? My defense of Bree was laced with my own unresolved fears, my instinctual need to cling to someone who reflected my struggles. Outside, the gravel finally shifted, and I could see the silhouette of a man against the lightning-lit horizon, a shadow far too familiar. My heartbeat quickened. Could it be my father? Would the moment he stepped into my world be the breaking point for everything fragile I held? Suddenly the door swung open, the storm flooding the barn with a gust of wind that sent shivers through us all. There he stood, my father, his figure as imposing as before, draped in the heavy fabric of anger. He searched the dimly lit space, his hair slick from the downpour, but his gaze was fierce, wild. "Jake," he growled, his voice like a thunderclap. "What are you doing here?" I stepped forward, feeling Bree's hand brush against mine as she edged hesitantly behind me, seeking comfort in my defense. I didn't know if she found it, but I felt it was a chance for both of us to stand tall even amidst encroaching adversity. Enough with the games," he cut me off, his intensity focused now on Marcus, who was still lingering in the backdrop, silent yet present. "You're letting him fill your head with nonsense." "It's not nonsense," I retorted, my heart pounding in my chest. "This is real, Dad. Bree's a person, not just some project for me to fix." The words surged inside me, a raw honesty I clung to as a shield against the man who had always sheltered disappointment like a badge. "What are you talking about?" My father's tone was incredulous, disbelief rippling through him. "If you think you can save everyone, you're going to end up losing yourself. Look around, this is a farm, not a charity case." That I could feel the ground beneath me shake with the weight of his words as the atmosphere thickened with tension. But before I could retort, a flash of fear coursed through Bree. "We didn't mean to cause trouble," she said, her voice tremulous. "I just wanted to." The storm outside unleashed its fury as rain pelted against the barn's roof like an angry drum. "You should be careful," my father said, taking a step closer, casting a shadow that seemed to engulf Bree's fragile spirit. "You don't know what you're getting into." A heaviness settled in the air, threatening to suffocate. I took a deep breath, trying to find the right words that would protect Bree from his claws, but I was too consumed by swirling thoughts of my own failures and fears of betrayal. "That's not your decision to make," I managed, my voice steady despite the quaking fear beneath. "You don't get to scare her away." That he paused, eyeing me like a hawk, the weight of years between us palpable in the air shrouded with storm's power. "What do you know about her?" He spat suddenly, the challenge sharp as glass. "Really?" I felt the blood drain from my face, my resolve trembling against the truth. In that moment, I realized how little I truly understood Bree. Her darkness mingled with mine, a tapestry of shared despair yet untold. There were layers to her that I brushed against, but never fully grasped, and what if I was dragging her deeper into my turmoil? Just then, a low rumble ignited from my father's belly, almost as if he recognized the budding conflict within me. "You might think you're her savior, Jake, but you might just lead her to her doom." A round of thunder rolled overhead, and in that instant, Bree's eyes flickered with something raw, a glimmer of what felt like a hidden truth. "Who I truly am," she whispered, voice trembling as the storm outside raged on, masking our deeper tumult, and that was if revelation hung in the air, pregnant with potential and threat. I was no longer certain whether protecting her would only expose us both further to danger rather than shield us. Each heartbeat echoed a question I dreaded: what if saving her meant unearthing something neither of us was ready for? With the storm swirling violently around us and silence amplifying the weight of unspoken words, I turned to Bree, searching her face for the answer she might hold. But the look she returned was filled with an urgency of its own, leaving me grasping for the truth just out of reach. That I stepped closer to her, knowing something had to shift, but the cloud of uncertainty loomed larger than the storm. A dangerous tension flickered. Would I unravel what lay buried, risking everything, or was keeping her secret the only way out? As I fought against the raging tide, the flicker of her fleeting hope became a haunting memory, and just as I opened my mouth to speak, a sickening sound echoed from outside, the sound of glass shattering. The shards of glass fell like raindrops, scattering across the gravel just outside the barn, each piece a reminder of the chaos that had come to claim us. My heart raced, caught between dread and a burgeoning resolve. Bree stepped closer, seized by an instinctual urgency that mirrored my own. "Jake," she whispered, her voice barely cutting through the storm, "we need to move." "Now, wait," I implored, my eyes lingering on the shadow of my father, whose presence felt like a storm cloud swelling with anger. There was something unsettling in his gaze, a flicker of realization that I was on the verge of pulling back the very veil that had kept him at bay all these years, but I couldn't ignore the desperation woven into Bree's words. The atmosphere crackled with unuttered truths, and I felt the weight of something dark looming, waiting patiently for the right moment to strike. "Let's get out of here," I finally said, turning my back on my father, who was now a silhouette of unresolved histories and burdens. As we moved toward the rear of the barn, a second crash resounded, echoing the shattering of the glass. This one cascaded up my spine like ice water. "What is happening?" I stole a glance back at Marcus, who stood rooted to the spot, catching his eye and seeing the mix of uncertainty and determination reflected back at me. "That it could be nothing, or it could be everything," Marcus finally said, his voice low, charged with an undercurrent of fear that felt like an electric current. He was right, the world outside the barn was cloaked in a demented calm, and we were stuck in the epicenter. "Help me," I urged Bree softly, trying to keep the tremor out of my voice. My skin prickled with the sense of danger, and the knowledge that moments like these could reshape lives forever anchored me in purpose. "If we leave now, we might still have time to figure this out." She nodded, but I could see the flicker of anxiety in her eyes, reflecting a tangled web of thoughts she hadn't voiced. Just as I pushed the door open, the gust of wind barreled through, cold and biting, a shiver spiraling around us like whispered warnings. That in the brief moment before stepping into the unknown, I caught one last glimpse of my father. His expression was unreadable, brimming with an amalgam of anger, fear, and something I couldn't quite place, regret. It unsettled me, sending tremors through my resolve. Without another word, I stepped out into the storm with Bree at my side, heart racing, adrenaline pumping through my veins as we faced the downpour. The air smelled of wet earth and impending change, and for a second, it felt as if the world stood still in anticipation. But that stillness shattered as we rounded the barn, coming face to face with the source of the window's destruction, a figure hunched low against the wreckage of what used to be a wooden fence, grappling with something dark, an enormous presence cloaked in shadows. "Get back!" I cried, instinctively moving to shield Bree, my heart pounding as my gaze settled on the figure fumbling amidst the scattered debris. As rain blurred the outline, I pressed forward cautiously, adrenaline sharpening my senses. "Who are you, Jake?" The voice was raspy yet familiar, rising through the din of the storm. Recognition hit me like a punch to the gut. It was Looke's childhood friend, lost to the tides of life and time, Lucas. I could hardly believe my eyes. There he stood, a young man now cloaked in dishevelment and weariness, the same dark eyes gazing out from a gaunt face that had once been filled with the brash confidence of adolescence. Was this a moment of reunion or a warning sign? "I was looking for you, looking for help." His words tumbled out, drenched in desperation. "Things have changed, man. Two need your help." Of all times I felt a swirl of emotions crash over me, the chaos of the storm outside echoed by the chaos inside. You can't be serious. You bring this mess to my door after all this time. Bree looked between us, confusion clouding her features. I caught a flicker of fear in her gaze that ignited a protective instinct within me. Jake. Please. I don't have time to explain, but it's serious. They're coming for me, Lucas pleaded, his desperation palpable under the weight of the storm. Who's coming? I stepped closer to him, abandoning the fierce wind for only a moment to dig deeper. A gang, something bigger than you could imagine. They know who you are now. I turned to Bree, who was still encased in fear, and I squeezed her hand, an anchor in the tumbling sea of uncertainty. We can't let them find you here, Lucas. We need to. A rumble ripped through the depths of the storm, punctuated by the unmistakable sound of engines revving in the distance. My breath caught in my throat, as if the storm had revealed the true nature of the peril we faced. Jake, Bree whispered urgently. What do we do? But as I opened my mouth to respond, the shriek of tires screeching against gravel shattered the air, and in that heart-stopping moment, the lurking dread transformed into raw terror. Shadows poured from the vehicles, dark figures trained on us with cold precision, and I knew this was only the beginning. As we stood at the cusp of chaos, I felt every ounce of hope drain away, replaced by an icy grip of uncertainty. Would we stand together against the oncoming tide, or would our stories drag us under, lost to the storm? The cold rain continued to tumble against the ground as shadows engulfed us, closing in. The figures, men clad in dark jackets, their features obscured by the downpour and the darkness of impending night, moved with an unsettling purpose. Adrenaline surged, a frantic heartbeat pounding in my ears as I wrestled with the gravity of the threat we faced. Lucas, are you sure you want to get us caught up in this? I hissed, my voice strained as I searched his eyes for answers that didn't come. Bree's grip tightened on my hand, grounding me even as the chaos spiraled. I didn't have a choice, man. Lucas' expression was raw, haunted by ghosts of decisions he'd made, lost opportunities and desperate escapes etched into his features. They won't let me just disappear again. Before I could respond, a voice roared across the storm. There. We found him. A growl filled with menace and authority shattered the air, chilling me to the core. The men moved like a pack, precision and tension radiating off them. Panic surged through my veins, and instinct kicked in. Run. I shouted as I shoved Bree forward, not waiting for a reply from Lucas. We dashed toward the thick trees lining the barn. In the back of my mind, I knew I was leaving my father and all our unresolved issues behind. We were being hunted, and survival became the only thought that mattered. As we sprinted through the muddy undergrowth, I dared a glance back. Lucas staggered, a look of fear and regret etched across his face. The shadows were too close, too eager to pull him back into the weight of whatever darkness pursued him. I needed to save my friend, Lucas. I yelled, the sound of the rain mingling with the roar of engines breaking the world apart around us. Come on. He hesitated for just a moment longer, then, in one swift motion, he pushed off the ground, catching up to us amidst the chaos. Relieved to see him near, I felt an unexpected flash of camaraderie. This was a childhood bond transcending time and circumstances. The men were relentless, barking orders as they fanned out. I could feel their presence creeping closer, the shadows trailing just behind us like a dark cloud unshakable from our lives. We ducked beneath low branches, soaked to our skin, hearts racing, praying we could slip away unnoticed. We burst from the tree line onto the open plains, the gusts of wind painful against our skin, and I scanned the horizon for anything that could serve as a sanctuary, my mind working feverishly. Desperation gnawed at me. How long could we keep running, there? Bree shouted, pointing toward an old hunting cabin barely visible through the dense fog of rain. It looked dilapidated but promising a place to hide. I grabbed both Bree and Lucas, leading the way toward the cabin as we approached the rickety door. It creaked ominously as I pushed it open, and we stumbled inside, locking it behind us with shaking hands. Each breath felt ragged against the eerie silence that filled the decaying space. Do you think they saw us? Bree panted, wide-eyed and trembling. What if they find us here? "Well, be okay," I reassured her, though uncertainty gnawed at me. I scanned the room, a dust-covered table, old crates, and remnants of past lives abandoned long ago. But it felt safer than the storm outside, at least for the moment. "Lucas, we need to know what's going on," I urged, forcing myself to focus on the present. "What have you gotten us into?" His head dropped, eyes clouding with regret. "I got involved with people who don't let go. They know things about our families, Jake. They're using that to get to me, and now that you're involved, they'll come after you too." "What do you mean, using?" Bree interjected, running a hand through her wet hair, voice laced with worry. "They're powerful," Lucas replied, inhaling deeply, trying to steady his emotions. "They've been watching you both, waiting to make their next move. They want to settle old scores related to your father's past, Jakey, a life he buried but is coming back to haunt us all." My heart raced, each beat resonating with doubt. The thread connecting my father to Lucas' plight stretched endlessly, aching with secrets I felt unprepared to face. The cabin felt smaller now, closing in around us as we grappled with what lay ahead. Thunder cracked overhead, echoing the turmoil within. I wanted to believe I could shield myself and Bree from the ghosts of our families, but it became evident the storm wasn't just outside. It lived in our pasts and, like the rain, refused to wash away. Suddenly, a heavy thud echoed against the door. The shouts of men grew louder outside. "We know you're in there." Their voices were relentless, clawing at the trembling walls of our refuge. "We won't last long," I said, panic clawing at my throat. I could see Bree's face pale, felt Lucas shift restlessly beside me. Would we stand together against the tide, or in trying to protect one another, would we drown within our shared history? The pounding on the door increased, time slipping through our fingers like the rain running down the windowpane. I steadied myself, taking a deep breath as I locked eyes with Bree and Lucas. "We need to move now," but before I could find a way out, the door burst open, and a shadow loomed against the threshold, silhouetted by the raging storm, a figure that made my blood run cold, certainty crashing down like shards of glass once more. It was my father. The air became charged with an intensity that nearly knocked the breath from my lungs. The figure standing in the doorway, storm-sodden and fierce, was not just my father, he was the embodiment of all the unanswered questions, every unresolved argument that had ever hung like an oppressive storm cloud over our lives. I had always equated his absence with freedom, but now, confronted with the weight of his presence, I felt more trapped than ever. "Jake," he called, his voice a low rumble, filled with a mixture of annoyance and fear. "What in God's name are you doing with him? You've put yourself in danger." The thunder roared overhead, somehow making the words even more potent, cutting through the storm's chaos to strike deep. I opened my mouth, but nothing came out. The bewilderment swirling in my chest clawed at my throat. "Dad, you don't understand." The words spilled out before I could catch them. "Lucas, didn't you think I want to hear excuses?" His eyes, typically so resolute, flickered with worry as he scanned the cabin, seeing the two of us standing in a tense standoff, dripping wet and terrified. "Do you know who is after him?" "After you, Jake. This isn't just some reckless adventure you can walk away from." "Then help us," Bree interjected, eyes wide with desperation. "We don't have time for this. We're being hunted because of Lucas, because of your past. Just tell us what to do." My father's gaze softened momentarily, pausing on Bree before narrowing back to me. The tension shifted in the room, and I felt the weight of history pressing against us, suffocating in its complexity. The veins in his forehead pulsed as he wrestled with emotions I had never seen him expose. "You don't know who you're dealing with," he finally relented, voice trembling at the edges. "This isn't some simple mistake, it's a tangled web of debts, anger, and old rivalries that could destroy us all." Lucas shifted beside me, unease radiating off him. "Your father knows something, Jake, something you deserve to hear. We can't keep living in shadows, thinking it doesn't involve us. They're coming for all of us." The reality of it settled in my gut like lead. I had thought we could navigate this nightmare safely, that we'd find a way without facing the truth head-on. I felt so foolish for believing that the past could be left buried, but there stood my father, the living testament of all my doubts and the remnants of a history I could not escape. Then tell us what we need to do, I urged, stepping closer, ready to confront whatever dark truths loomed in the air. Please, just let us in. Lightning flickered through the cabin's dirt-streaked windows, illuminating my father's face, and for a fleeting moment, I saw a flicker of the man I had once known before everything shattered. He hesitated, wrestling with himself, searching for words that felt lost to him. There's no easy path, he breathed, voice crackling with tension. But we can't stay here, not for long. They'll know we came here. We need to leave, all of us. Get to the old farm tucked away east of here. It's our only chance. Before I could digest his words, another loud knock rattled the door, followed by the same voices from before, growling commands that were a veil over threats. The shadows of men were closing in, darkness driven by intentions that relished the chaos. Time's running out, Lucas prompted, urgency fueling his voice. Your father's right, we need to stick together if we're going to make it out of this. What about your part? My father asked Lucas, his gaze sharp, piercing. You're putting them in danger. Think carefully about what you're asking of them. I know what I've done. Lucas shot back, frustration rising. But this isn't just about my past anymore, it's about theirs too. I won't let them pay for my mistakes. The storm outside roared its approval or its disapproval. It felt so preordained, yet it was also a clarion call for a reckoning that was long overdue, thrumming in the air and binding us in uncertainty. Then hurry, I urged. Let's go, all of us. We need to move now. The door shook again, and as Bree and I steeled ourselves to follow my father's lead, a sudden crash echoed from the darkness just as he turned, ushering us through the back of the cabin. But as we slipped away into the night, leaving one nest of chaos for another, uncertainty flipped inside me. A chill whispered that something deeper awaited us beyond the veil of anonymity in the shadows. Wait! I shouted, half catching my father's eye. What about Mom? Is she safe? Is she involved in this? My father's expression shifted. There was something in his eyes, shifting from the storm of resolve to one of hesitation. Jake, I can't explain everything now, but just as he opened his mouth again, a blinding flash of light tore through the night, exploding in the distance, the sound sending shockwaves through the atmosphere. My heart dropped, realizing that this was no coincidence. Our time was running out, and the world we thought we'd escaped was drawn irresistibly back into focus, waiting for us, biding its time in the darkness beyond. The corners of the woods creaked and groaned as we stumbled through the underbrush, branches scraping against us like fingers clinging for solace. Some primal instinct pushed me forward, an urgency coiling in my gut as I kept pace with my father, who led the way. The thunderclouds roamed overhead, almost aware of our flight, weaving shadows deeper into the night and shrouding our fears. Lucas, stay close. I glanced back at him. He moved like a ghost, fading yet ever present, glancing too often at our surroundings. Anxiety radiated off him in waves. Bree trailed beside him, a sentinel of quiet strength, though her eyes darted worriedly. Keep moving. My father barked again, each command sharper than the last. I yearned to grab his arm, to ask all the questions lurking like ghosts in my thoughts, but the urgency of our flight cloaked any hesitation. Where exactly is this farm? Bree asked, her voice threading through the chaos. Not far. Just beyond the ridge, he replied tersely. It's the crash of heavy feet echoed behind us, making my heart race painfully against my ribs. Run! We propelled ourselves forward, branches snapping as we tore through the underbrush, breathless and quickening in desperation. I had never realized how heavy fear could become, not just the weight of the past sitting ominously in my chest, but the rising terror of losing everything that mattered now. The hidden elements of Lucas' past seemed to hang around us in shrouded veils, each flicker of movement in the darkness a reminder that we were all tangled in something vast and unnerving. My pulse quickened at each sound, and the world morphed into a maze of shadows and uncertainty. The ridge loomed ahead, shadowy against the skyline. Just as we crested it, my family's old farm came into view, a lonely structure that welcomed us like a ghost. The buildings were worn down and tired, memory choked and suffocated by time. Once a home, it felt more like the carcass of our history, "Well, need to hurry," my father urged, urgency bleeding into his voice. "We can barricade ourselves inside for now." Lucas shot him a look that spoke volumes, a silent agreement about their shared burden slinking into the corners of the dim light. I watched them share a moment that bore heavy with the weight of secrets, feeling increasingly like an outsider in this narrative of intertwined pasts. As we rushed through the creaky wooden door, I stole a glance back at the surrounding darkness that seemed to conspire against us. A pile of old hay in the far corner of the barn regained my attention, a sense of nostalgia blending with a chill. Somewhere within that crumbling facade of a life, my mother's laughter once danced through the air. If only I knew where she was now, if she was safe, if she was just waiting for the story to unfold. "Help me push this," my father murmured, steering us to a heavy door at the back. He planted his shoulder against it, straining to fit the old, rotting beam into place as I joined him, forcing the door into a makeshift barricade. Bree rummaged through piles of discarded farm tools, pulling free a rusty pitchfork to defend ourselves. Lucas stood beside her, sharp eyes scanning the surrounding darkness outside. Each thread of tension in his body radiated a magnetic pull of irresistible danger. "That we shouldn't have come back here," Lucas finally whispered, the weight of fear drawing tight around his voice. "None of this would be happening." "What do you mean?" I asked, a lump forming as uncertainty curled deeper into my being. That he shifted uneasily, guilt heavy on his shoulders. "I didn't expect them to come after you. I wasn't prepared for this media too involved, the past too insistent." "Lucas," Bree spoke softly, "we need to focus. I can't lose more people I care about. Then we keep fighting," he insisted, steeling himself. "We stand together, we plan, and we don't let the past define us." A loud noise ricocheted from outside, the sound of a door slamming a few hundred yards away. It brought us back to the present, each heart thudding in rhythm. I felt the room consume us, walls tightening as though they held the air captive. The revelations of my fears pulled me closer to bursting. "What if we lose my father?" My voice trembled, saturated with terror. "What if he doesn't survive this?" Bree's eyes met mine, a kind of determination burning within them. "We won't let that happen, Jake. We can't give up now. We need to trust that he's strong enough to fight this." But all my resolve faded again when another crash echoed through the night, one that felt magnified, too close for comfort. A dull dread settled deep in my bones. There was no escaping the true enemy lurking outside the walls we clung to. As my father rushed to gather supplies, his face etched with concern mixed with determination, something crashed through the window, shards of glass glittering in the darkness like splintered stars. I could feel panic clawing back up my throat, and then, amidst it all, a figure emerged from the shadows, silhouetted against the roar of the storm. My heart plummeted. Another intruder? Or something far worse, an omen carrying whispers of doom? "Jake," the figure called softly, and I froze, recognition flooding through me like ice water. It was a voice I remembered too well. The last voice I ever expected to hear again. "Mom." I breathed, disbelief twisting like a knife deep into my gut. As the storm raged outside, I felt the world around me slip away, reality echoing in an unsettling haze. The figure before us wavered like a memory strung between desire and fear. "Jake," she repeated, her voice marred by the wind howling through the shattered glass. "Mom." I couldn't comprehend the miracle that refused to dissipate. Every ounce of doubt, every haunting worry about her safety crashed against the walls of my heart, failing to breach them as hope surged to the surface. Bree and Lucas exchanged quick glances, their confusion reflecting my own as we stood frozen in disbelief. My heart raced, shifting from fear to a mix of longing and denial. She looked different, aged by a decade of worry, perhaps, but her essence remained. The mother I'd missed and mourned was right there, inexplicably real. "Jake, I'm here," she said, her eyes bright with unshed tears. "I was searching for you, for all of you." "What do you mean?" I couldn't help the tremor in my voice, the disbelief that clawed at the fringes of my sanity. "We thought you were gone. Why didn't you come back?" The questions spilled from my lips as fury mingled with joy, each syllable a frail tether anchoring me to reality. "It wasn't safe." I thought her voice faltered, and a shadow of guilt crossed her features. I wanted to protect you. By running away. I shot back, my heart racing with a mixture of anger and hurt. You left us alone, Mom. We've been. A loud crash against the door interrupted my pain, and I felt the air thicken. My father's brows drew together, unease sweeping through the room. Get behind me, he commanded, stepping forward, the protective instinct alive in his weary gaze. Stay back, I rasped, panic flaring as I grappled with the sudden urgency. They're looking for us. They could. Jake, they're here. Bree's voice sliced through the tension, and I shifted my attention back to the shattered remnants of the barn, where figures began to seep into the broken light, dark silhouettes shifting like phantoms, advancing toward our fragile sanctuary. Mom turned to face the encroaching silhouettes, the weight of her choices hanging thick in the air. It's not safe. We need to go now, she urged, gripping my arm, but there was a fear underlying her urgency that shattered my heart. Where? The desperation choked me as I sought clarity in this chaos. You left us, and now you want us to follow you into what? More danger. I just wanted to keep you safe. Her words fell, heavy and haunting. But time is slipping away. Please, trust me. Before I could respond, Lucas lunged for the pitchfork, gripping it like a lifeline. He'll fight for us. Whatever this is, we're not going down without a fight. His eyes flickered between my mother and the darkness outside, bold courage melding with an instinctive need to protect. Mom turned back toward the doorway, and fear rippled through the air. The figures were advancing, faces illuminated by the fleeting light. Their intent became clearer with each step. They weren't simply here to talk. Please, Mom whispered, her voice trembling. We need to escape together. We couldn't let them find you. They were looking for more than just the past. Her words snagged at the threads of our reality, weaving an unsettling understanding of the depth of danger entwined with our return. As the shadows prowled closer, panic ignited, threatening to unravel everything I thought I understood. What are you talking about? I pressed, torn between her instincts and the creeping doom dragging at my mind. The fear that once gnawed at me was now bolstered by something more sinister, mirroring her earlier evasion as her eyes darted to the trembling door. A collective gasp echoed as the door splintered. We won't let them take you. Dad's voice surged with power, his resolve a thin shield even as he stepped toward the entryway, prepared to stand against the force that pursued us. But who were they? And what had Mom been hiding? Jake! Lucas yelled, urging me to remain steady, as the shadows closed in, shifting in a whirl of uncertainty. My heart pounded against my chest, encased in fear and suffocating tension with my father charging toward danger and my mother caught in a whirlwind of lies. Suddenly, she reached out, her fingers brushing against mine, grounding me in the momentum island in a tempest. I promise, whatever happens next, we'll face it together. But the roaring storm outside swallowed her vow into its chaotic embrace. As the door finally burst open with a resounding crack, and chaos spilled in like an angry tide, I felt something break deep within me, an unsettling truth coiling around my heart, threatening to pull me under. In that moment of despair, I could only hope that we could fight against the tide, against the shadows closing in, and perhaps, desperately, a chance to fight for each other remained. But just as I thought we would face whatever came together, I caught a malevolent glimmer in the eyes of one of the encroaching figures, a glint of recognition that felt far too personal for this darkened night. The realization slammed into me with staggering force, leaving me breathless. The enemy was more intertwined with our past than I could have ever imagined. Mom. My voice quivered as the answer loomed like a thunderstorm above us, deepening the cracks of reality. What exactly did you bring us back to? The chaos of rain and the pounding of heartbeats filled the air, an orchestra of impending doom. The door splintered grandly, revealing silhouettes cloaked in shadows that felt familiar yet dark, each figure a horror stirring from the depths of what remained hidden. I tightened my grip on Bree's hand, feeling the tremor that coursed through her, as if the weight of secrets and despair bore down on both of us with every breath we took. Every step closer they took felt like a step into a past I hadn't fully escaped. Mom stood still before the threshold, her motherly instinct colliding fiercely with the trembles wrought by fear. It was a strangled mix of hope and guilt, the years lost wrapped tightly around her. There she was, my mother, the puzzle piece I had lost, now facing the shadows of mistakes long buried. I wanted to leap into her arms, but something heavy restrained me, holding me anchored in the fragile storm swirling just outside the cabin. "That I need everyone to listen," my father's voice rose, breaking the trembling silence. In him, there was no hesitance now, there was a change. A fierce protection ignited within him, fierce as the storm running rampant outside. "We don't know how many are coming, but they won't stop until they get what they want." As he spoke, I felt the weight of our collective past close in on us, unseen yet as real as the imminent threat against our lives. "Jake," Bree murmured, her eyes wide, brimming with fear and determination. "What do we do?" The shadows danced closer, whispers floating ominously with every flickering candlelit burst illuminating the night. The familiar faces surged into view, each one a reminder of the battles I had spent a lifetime escaping. They were no longer outsiders, they were a reckoning personified, a reflection of my family's tangled past. "They were the ones that hurt our family," Lucas whispered low to me, his voice edging on panic. "The gang your father was." My father turned sharply, glaring at Lucas as if he had spoken a fatal truth. "Enough!" he barked, keeping the world from crumbling in on itself as old tensions bubbled to the surface. Mom stepped closer, her eyes darting between my father and me, horror flashing as fury and regret twisted her features. "No, no, we can't." "Why did you come back?" "You don't understand how dangerous this is," my father protested, turning back towards her, desperation rising in his tone. "You're risking everything. Everything fell apart while you were gone." She cried back, anger flaring beneath the surface of her motherly instinct. "They're here because of us, because of the past. They know we're together again." Before I could fully process her words, the air filled with the screeching crunch of gravel under heavy boots outside as several dark figures advanced, blocking our only escape. The realization slammed into me like an avalanche. This wasn't just about us anymore, this was a battlefield of choices and consequences that had always loomed in the background, the past we couldn't escape. "Jake," Mom turned to me, her voice softening, something breaking behind her fierce resolve. "Please believe me. I came back to protect you." "Protect me?" The words shot out like a dart, laced with disbelief and a depth of hurt that felt unending. "You left us. How could you think coming back would help?" "Because I made mistakes. You need to know the truth about your father's past." She stepped towards me, desperation painted in her ashen eyes. "He made choices that put us in danger because of people we tried to escape. I don't care about that," I retorted, the frustration boiling over as I aimed my anger at the shadows. "I'm not interested in the mistakes, I just need us to survive this." "Ah, but survival is all bound up in the truth," said a voice from the encroaching dark, chillingly familiar yet eerily distant. A figure stepped forth into the flickering lantern light, refined and menacing, a presence I recognized too well. It was Jonathan, the antagonist from our nightmares, an embodiment of twisted grief. "And you're all of the essence of that truth. It's time we settle all these old debts." The shadows behind him peeled away as he advanced, flanked by familiar faces, remnants of lies wrapped in affability. Panic surged within me, the world blurred, and I felt time stretch, each second pulling tighter like a noose. "This is no place for old resentments," my father warned, stepping toward Jonathan, his voice stealing but faltering slightly under the tension. An uncomfortable silence hung heavy as they stood toe to toe, two men bound by a shared past that was neither forgiving nor easily forgotten. "It's more than resentments," Jonathan replied coolly, his gaze searching the room, settling conspiratorially on my mother's trembling figure. "It's about settling the score. The price of their choices just might mean parading their entire lineage before me to finally face the truth of what they did. Leave my family out of this," my father shouted, a ferocity burning in him as he faced his past head-on. "You're wrong to think this ends here." Bree, seeing the writing on the wall, moved instinctively beside me, unable to hide the horror gracing her features. "We need a way out of here, come on." But I was frozen, caught between the lure of old history and the adamant need to create a future that had been forever shaken. If we knew each other's truth, could we find a way together? I breathed, a quiet plea resonating in my heart. Jake, Bree murmured, her voice trembling but fierce, holding me steady. We have to fight together. As the storm unleashed a torrent outside, the scene was set a confrontation emboldened by both hope and despair, where ghosts of the past loomed large, ready to eclipse our every chance for redemption. In that pivotal moment of unwrapping a lifetime of hurt, I felt the thin cord linking me to my family tighten. I had fought for my past, for the voice of truth buried in me, and no finalized winds of change entwined with the pulse of resistance surged through. I turned to my father and then to Bree, a new resolve settling over me. Then if we're going to fight, let's do it as a family. Bree nodded, and side by side, with all our ghosts standing against us, we faced the overwhelming darkness, bridging no escape. A flaring lesson echoed within me. We carried every thread of our past, binding us together and shaping the future we dared to reclaim. Just as the tension spilled over, the door burst open entirely, the tempest unfurling before us as shadows stormed into the dim light. We braced ourselves, hearts pounding, futures hinging on the brink of the chaos, ready to face whatever darkness loomed ahead. And as the shadows swallowed us, I took one last glance back at my mother, who was fighting her own battle against the past, colliding with the present, within our storm. For in the unraveling, amid the tempest, perhaps we could still find forgiveness amid the wreckage, and embrace who we might become on the other side. In a final breath before the tempest crashed around us, I whispered, together.